Class is in session.
And welcome to Unlearn 16. Class is in session, guys. You just get me today. Just me. No traveling podcasts. No, what was it called? A blog? A boog? No, a vlog. We did have a good time, and I had a great time doing that. And I promise you we will do more. But for today, guys, I think it's about time we talked about the Supreme Court. I wanted to be a bit fun in the summer. And watching what the Supreme Court is doing is making my blood pressure go up to epic proportions. And so now I'm going to have to talk about it. And what I'm going to focus on today, even though there's a litany of things that I could be focusing on, I'm going to choose to speak to the unconstitutionality or the supposed unconstitutionality of higher education institutions using affirmative action to decide upon their student body and how they're being let in and who gets let in and at what point. Listen, do I think affirmative action is the best possible way to have diversity inclusion? Probably not. Can I think of a better way? No, I can't. So let's not assume, let's just look at history. Let's acknowledge, go down a path for a minute. Let us acknowledge the priority, the sense of entitlement, the privilege that groups have had in the United States for generations upon generations upon generations in order to get into higher education facilities. And that privilege comes with a whole subset of things, being able to participate in sporting events, in clubs, and all of those kinds of things, being able to donate your time, being able to get tutors, being able to get the highest marks because of said tutors, being able to take college prep courses, blah, 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 blah. All of these different things, right up to and including legacy admissions. When we look at all of that, and we, as a society, assume, stipulate that getting into college is anywhere an objective test and measure of a student's intelligence, capacity, work ethic, potential, all of those things is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The Supreme Court presupposed in that acknowledgement, in that decision that they just came down with, they presupposed that without affirmative action policies, that getting into places like Harvard, Yale, Princeton were objective tests of all of those factors I just mentioned. Therein lies the asinine part. And again, we can sit here and debate, does affirmative action as it's applied in universities, and by the way, as it's applied in universities and as it's applied in other places varies, okay? There's lots of different ways to have affirmative action policies. For instance, affirmative action could look like this. It could look like, as it is for the Toronto Police Force, that they won't begin to sort or hire or pull people for interviews until the pool of applicants has a diverse sort of component to it, meaning they want to make sure that a certain number of women, a certain number of visible minorities, a certain number of each group have actually applied to the police force before they sit down and decide who the best applicants are. Doesn't that make sense? So what that says is, it says that the police force is required, and the way that they go out and try to get applicants, they are required to diversify the body from which they are going to choose applicants. So they have to go find these people. They have to make it available. They're not forcing people to apply, but they make it available. That seems reasonable to me. That seems reasonable. In other professions, it might be the tipping point, right? It might be the tipping point. If all things being relatively equal, then race or history of oppression or history of persecution actually gives them, let's say, a leg up. Let's say if it's a tipping point, all things being equal, we're going to give the individual a chance who has been historically, consistently excluded. Now let's change this to education for a minute. And I can come back and I can talk about affirmative action as it applies to police, as it applies to firefighting, and I could talk all day long about how different policies have made those particular forces better and stronger and more holistic and well-rounded. But let's just stick to education, okay? Let's just stay there. My first question, so they've taken away all these quotas. They've taken away all of the ways in which race might be the tipping point, because that's what we're doing here, right? Everybody loves to talk about affirmative action and goes, oh, well, that kid over there failed biology, but since he is a minority, all of a sudden he's going to Yale for chemistry. Stop it. It's never happening. Let's embrace that first. Please. Please. Let's embrace the fact first that we are not choosing from candidates who are completely ill-prepared and undereducated and ill-equipped to handle the rigors of Harvard or Yale or whatever. We are choosing from a body of people who have relatively similar educational and capacity background. And then we're taking that into account. And before we go through all of this and start talking about it to a bigger degree, let's talk about the idea that as far as education goes, I have been a teacher for 20 years. If somebody could please show me an objective, fair, credible methodology to judging somebody's intelligence, capacity, and potential in education, where is that? Please, I would love to know. Where is that in high school? Let's go through all the ways in which it's a ridiculous expectation to assume there's sort of a level of equity anywhere across the board. Okay? Number one, what school do you go to? We know this. I could hand the exact same paper, the exact same Macbeth paper in to 10 different high schools and get 10 different marks. Now what? Who's right? Who's better? The school that's marking me harder, by the way, the school that has a higher academic rigor, probably is going to give a lower grade. Does that mean I am not better for Harvard than the kid that went to another school and got an easy grade? Does that mean that? How in the hell can we standardize that? You can't. Number one. Number two, when we're taking economic background into account, for example, if I have a student who works at a job 30 hours a week, 25 hours a week, and also goes to high school and also does extracurricular, and they manage to pull off an 85. And I compare that individual to the person who has tutors, who has no job, no other responsibility, who can do everything in their world to just benefit them and their capacity and their ability in the classroom, and they get a 93, 85, 93. You would think, objectively, Joanna, even if the schools were exactly the same with how they mark, which is absolutely not the case, objectively, the 93 is better. Bull. I've been a teacher for 20 years. I'll take the 85 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. Why? Because that student has proven what they can do while also going to school and trying to learn physics. I am not saying the 93 is not a great student. I am simply making the point, it is not an objective measure of intelligence and capacity. It is a measure of the school they go to, the help they get or do not get, and the way they balance everything in their lives. And that's what places like Harvard are trying to include. So when they put race on the table, by the way, they also put economics on the table. They also put how much money you have coming from on the table. But when they put race on the table, what they're saying is students from particular racial backgrounds who have faced historical levels of marginalization, discrimination, oppression, have done all of that, have faced all of that, and got a 90, and joined that club, and worked that job, and joined that team, or whatever it was they did, and volunteered for that hospital. Now you're asking me who is a better candidate for Harvard, and I'm telling you, who the hell knows? I'm saying our admissions policies are absolutely asinine. And when you throw the SATs on there, as you do in the United States, there is the most perfect illusion of objectivity and an illusion of potential judgment, of academic judgment on intelligence, both of which are utterly false. And we know they are utterly false. We know that because we see places dropping the LSATs left, right, and center. We see places dropping the SAT scores because they don't see them as having a direct correlation with what you need to do in school anymore. You look over the ages and you watch genius after genius after genius drop out of school. Why? If there's such a good marker of intelligence, of brilliance, of the next generation of thinkers, if that's who we want to bet on, right? Why are they dropping out? Why are they not staying in school? Well, they're not staying in school because they will exactly say it is a cookie cutter mentality, not built for original, creative, amazing, forward thinking thought. What? And instead of looking at the education system going, damn, you're right. That we don't have those things. We sit them down, we tell them to write a 3-hour exam, we tell them to write this kind of essay, we tell them to do this and this and this, and when they can't formulate all of these coherent thoughts in the particular order we've asked them to do so, we call them unintelligent. We say you are not worthy. We say please form a line to the left because everybody else is going to Harvard, but not you because you couldn't write a 5-paragraph essay in the right amount of time, talking about the poetic symbolism of Macbeth's soliloquies. Go ahead, say that 10 times fast. We have created illusions every single place we've gone. And coincidentally, not at all coincidentally, those symbolic, pretentious ideals of objectivity have consistently and historically benefited those in the controlling elite majority class. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you why it is. And it's the same thing that everybody's trying to deny all over the United States and a lot of part of Canada right as we speak. When you create a game, a country, a nation, when you create a legal system, when you create a way in which we interact with each other and what you need to get ahead and how that getting ahead serves you, the people that created it to benefit themselves. I'm not even saying that maliciously. I'm saying right now, if I was to create a sport, guess what? Being really tall would be a freaking disadvantage. It just would be. Because I want a sport I can kick butt on. And being 5'6", I'm not kicking butt against the 6'2" player. So cool. My sport, being tall, disadvantage. And I don't even think we do that necessarily consciously. I think a lot of what we do is subconscious. And again, standardized tests have been proven time and time and time and time again to be racially, culturally, even gendered biased on the information you draw, on the ways in which you think, and the methodology that you use in order to pass that test. And that's not even to mention the economic part that you throw in there. When I say that anybody with a significant sum of money get SAT prep courses and tutors and books and practice tests and groups that they study and tricks for the test. Who's the better student? Who's the better student? And anybody who is an adult and has passed their educational requirements would also know that the individual that gets the 99 doesn't necessarily make the best employee, the best worker, the best entrepreneur. They don't necessarily change or adapt to the environment in which they are put in because they are used to such particular structure. And that's why I argue that affirmative action in its broadest sense should have been expanded. We should stop calling it affirmative action, to be perfectly honest. And by the way, this is what Harvard's going to do because they're smarter than this theocrat sitting on the Supreme Court. Harvard's going to do, and all of those schools are going to do what they should have done long ago. Stop calling it affirmative action. Start calling it intelligent hiring, intelligent recruiting. Start understanding that diversity and equity isn't trying to do them a favor. It's not trying to do the individual a favor. It is trying to make the institution stronger by having more creativity, more divergent sources of intelligence and capacity all come to the table at once. That's how progress happens. That's how change happens. If you want them to drone out the same boring crap about Shakespeare they've been doing for the last 300 years, cool. You guys can go to that school. But guess what? That school isn't doing anything interesting. That school's not changing the world. That school doesn't have geniuses being born and bred. Schools that understand that they need a whole bunch of different ways of getting at information, that's genius. Stop calling it affirmative action. Because again, you are not doing them a favor. You're not evening playing fields. We need to start recognizing that the kid that works 30 hours a week, joined the volleyball team, got a 88 in chemistry, takes care of their family. That kid is a bit of a superstar. And that kid does better at juggling, at being able to do many different things at one particular time. That kid can handle stress and anxiety. That kid has had so many balls in the air that they've stopped juggling just with their hands. That kid is going to be able to take each issue, each wave of change, each transition of time period and exception, and they are going to be able to do more and more genius things. That kid is going to have more transferable skills. And in a Charles Darwin-esque kind of way, that kid is going to be able to adapt. And if you study evolution and you study the survival of the fittest, it is not the strongest of the species. It's not the biggest muscles, the biggest guns, the most money. It's the individual that can adapt to change. And the individual that can adapt to change has to have a holistic sense of education. Has to understand that biology is just important as music, has to understand that there will be waves of change that will hit them at any given moment, and they are going to have to shoulder that, adjust, reposition themselves, and make space for the future. And that, my friends, is what affirmative action was supposed to be getting at. So go ahead, Supreme Court. Ban affirmative action. It was a stupid moniker anyway. Because it sold a faulty lie. It gave the pretense, oh, we're just helping these poor, oppressed minorities, when in actuality, it is the people under the most pressure that will do great things. And what we should be doing is changing admission structures in order to more clearly see what a student has gone through, what they have shouldered, and the potential that they will be able to unlock because of all of that past experience while still understanding trigonometry. I mean, I don't understand it, but I'm sure somebody does. Do you understand me? This idea needs to be turned on its head. And that's how we will have real positive change in education. And by the way, in every other career that we're going to be talking about here. Stop calling it that. And maybe the same mentality will start hiring, which is hysterical, start hiring stay-at-home moms that have stayed at home and taken care of their 4 kids, taken 10 years or 15 years out of the industry, try to come back to the industry and nobody wants to hire them. Are you dumb? Are you ridiculously short-sighted and brain damaged? Because an individual or a stay-at-home dad, an individual that has gotten that education, that has gone into the workforce, that has chosen to stay home, take care of those kids, and then multitask their entire lives, and then wants to come back to the industry, sign them up, give them a raise, give them the corner office. I don't care what you do. They are going to be fantastic. They are going to be able to multitask their way into the next generation. And what do? Well, we judge them for being out of the career for 10, 15 years. You think that's going to stop them? You don't think they can catch up with the latest version of Microsoft Word? Come on now. Let's not assume we have any objective measure of intelligence or aptitude, period. Stop assuming that. There is no way. I sit down and I've interviewed teachers. I can look at their grades. Do you think if they got an 88 in chemistry or a 92, do you think that matters? Come on. To be honest, being perfectly honest, sitting down with a teacher who said, listen, that 88 was because I took chemistry again. A lot of people would be like, oh my God, you didn't get it right the first time. Showing that you can struggle, showing that you will struggle and you will force yourself to learn and you will keep at it until you get it. As a teacher, that's a skill set you can't teach. A teacher that gets things easily, just like an athlete that gets things easily, does not make the best coach because they've never had to struggle to get the skill. Where is that on a teaching application? You know what I mean? Oh, he got 88 in chemistry. Oh, wait, but this other guy got 75. They took it again and got 85. And he constantly takes courses in order to update themselves, to understand better teaching strategies in order to get it quickly. Hire that individual. That individual. If we are looking for the best and the brightest to go off to university, if we are looking to pave the way, if we truly want the Ivy League to be the Ivy League, not a place to put our kids because I used to go there and now I want my legacies to attend there as well, and I've donated a library in order to ensure that happens. If we don't want that, and we want actual progress and intelligence and brilliance in our educational halls, then we need to all admit right away there's no such thing as objectivity, number one. Number two, we need to open the path and doorways and sections of many different ways to attempt, and I use that word attempt because it won't be perfect, to attempt to judge somebody's drive, determination, capacity, potential, and intelligence, all of those things formulated into one to take the best bet on the best student to do amazing things. And then education becomes what it's supposed to be. A place where people want to be challenged. They want to sit in rooms with brilliance. They want to argue and debate theory and idea. They don't just want to sit down and memorize so they can get into the next school, the next business school, the next law school, the next medical school in order to get their degree, in order to sign off and get in their career so they can make boatloads of money. We need a new system. So, good, Supreme Court. Ban it. because it was doing us a disservice anyways. Harvard will come out with an entirely new way of judging, of garnering how a holistic student is going to, and I keep using Harvard, but the whole Ivy League is in play here, is going to pick and choose students for who's going to go to their school. Good. I'm glad. It's going to make way for what should have been happening years ago, when we were fumbling around trying to figure out how to fix this nightmare of a system that historically has only ever propagated the majority culture, the majority view, the majority ideas, making way, by the way, for a new emergent culture in which we say everything's on the table, bring it all on the table. In order to do that, we need to let go of those old ideas. So let go of affirmative action. I think it's about time, just like everything the Supreme Court has struck down recently in their very ridiculously right-wing, for the most part, theocratic ideology. Let them do it this way. And let us understand that we are more intelligent, more capable, more genius than they will ever be. And let's start creating new institutions and new ways of doing things and challenge the Supreme Court in new and exciting ways so they can't use outdated logic and outdated ideals and outdated ways that we tried to use when we were fumbling in the dark of the 90s to fix a broken system. We can be more articulate. We can be more powerful. We can understand the Constitution better. So let's start now. This is a new generation, and to every new generation, well, let's be honest, a slayer is born, but so are great academics. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I will see you next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat station. Dismissed.